I'm going to be showing you guys builds that I think are going to be very good for the new Onslaught mode. If you guys have not checked out the Hunter or the Warlock one, be sure to check it out on the channel. And of course, for all of these builds, they will be in the link in the description if you guys are interested. Let's first start on the Solar Subclass. For the gauntlets, be sure to go for Pyro Gale gauntlets because it modifies your Burning Maul into a single high damage slam of your hammer that creates several cyclones of flame. Consecration second slam creates a cyclone as well. So for the super, of course, be sure to go for Burning Maul. And for your solar melee, it doesn't really matter what you're using, but for me, I'm using Throwing Hammer because whenever we pick it up, it would cause cure to yourself. And for the solar grenade, I chose to put Healing Grenade just because of survivability sake. And for the aspects, be sure to put Sol Invictus. Whenever you get solar ability final blows, or whenever you defeat scorched targets, it would summon this sunspot. Whenever you're inside a sunspot, your abilities will regenerate faster, and also your super drains more slowly. Your sunspots also apply scorch and also deal damage to that target inside. And lastly, whenever you enter a sunspot, it would also apply restoration to yourself. And for the main solar aspect you're going to want to use is Consecration. While sliding, activate your charge melee ability to launch a wave of solar energy forward, damaging and scorching targets in front of you as you leap into the air. And as you're in midair, activate your charged melee again to slam to the ground and create a second larger wave of damaging solar energy. If that enemy was hit by that scorch attack, they will ignite. And for the aspects, the first one I chose to put is Ember of Benevolence. Applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants increased grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for a short time, but you would get minus 10 discipline. The second fragment is Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy, and it would also create a fire sprite, but you would get plus 10 recovery. And whenever you pick up a fire sprite, it would grant you grenade energy. The third solar fragment is Ember of Empyrean. Solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you, but you would get minus 10 resilience. The final fragment is Emperor of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and your nearby allies radiant, but you would get minus 10 discipline. Onto the weapons. For the kinetic weapon, I'm putting this Strand Shotgun, and for the perks, be sure to go for Pugilist and also Sword Logic. And for the origin trait of the shotgun, it's called Cursed Thrall. After defeating a target with a melee attack, final blows with this weapon causes targets to explode for a short duration. And you can also be able to stun anti-barrier champions because we are getting unraveling rounds with the seasonal artifact mods, and we're also going to be getting radiant as well. For the energy weapon, be sure to go for a hand cannon, but primarily a solar hand cannon. And for the perks for this hand cannon, be sure to go for explosive payload and incandescent. So we are using a hand cannon, so in the seasonal artifacts we can be able to stun unstoppable champs. For the exotic weapon I'm putting is the Dragon's Breath, and if you do have the catalyst for this rocket launcher, all it would do is that it would replenish your fuel faster, and also whenever you defeat a target with this weapon, it would cause them to periodically drop a fire sprite. So yes, this is a rocket launcher, so for the seasonal artifact mods, we are using Overload rocket launcher. And if you guys would like to check out the seasonal artifact mods, it would be right here if you're interested. And for the stats, be sure to go for Resilience because if you have tier 10, it would give you a 30% damage reduction. And for the second stat, be sure to go for Discipline. And here are the armor mods for this build if you guys are interested. The main ones that I do want to mention is on the gauntlet called Melee Kickstart. Long story short, whenever you have armor charges, it would consume that into more melee energy. And also for the boots, I am using elemental charge, so whenever we collect a fire sprite, we would have an escalating chance to give ourselves an armor charge. Now onto the second build, the Void Subclass. So for the exotic armor piece you're going to have to put is the Heart of Inmost Light. So whenever you use your grenade, melee, or barricade, it would empower the other two abilities. Empowered means that abilities have faster regen, melees and grenades do more damage, and barricades have more hit points. So for the Sentinel subclass, on the super, go for Ward of Dawn. And for the class ability, you can choose either or, but for me, I'm using Rally Barricade. And for the Void melee, I'm using Shield Throw to make it easier to proc the Heart of Inmost Light perk. And for the Void Grenade, be sure to go for Vortex Grenade because that's gonna suck everything up. Onto the aspects. The first one is Controlled Demolition. Hitting a target with a Void ability or Volatile Explosion makes them volatile. Further damage to a volatile target causes them to explode, grants you and your nearby allies health when volatile targets explode near you. The next Void aspect is Bastion. Whenever you cast your barricade, it would grant an overshield to yourself and nearby allies, and it would also empower it, enabling it to slowly regenerate the overshield of all allies bunkering behind it and extend their overshield duration. The first fragment you're going to want to put is Echo of Undermining. Your Void Grenades weaken targets, but you would get minus 20 discipline. The second fragment is Echo of Remnants. Your lingering grenade effects, such as Void Grenades, have increased duration. The third fragment is Echo of Persistence. instance, void buffs applied to you, such as invisibility, overshield, and devour, have increased duration, but you would get minus 10 resilience. The final fragment is Echo of Expulsion. Void ability final blows causes targets to explode, but you would get plus 10 intellect. Now for the weapons, I chose to put this Strand bow just because of the seasonal artifact mods, and for the perks that I do recommend going for on this bow is Slice, and for the second one, go for Hatchling. And also we are using a bow, so we can now be able to stun unstoppable champions. For the exotic weapon I chose to put is on the energy slot, and it's called the Buried Bloodline. So whenever you hit a target, it would leech them, and 2, if you were to get multiple final blows, you would grant Devour to yourself. And if you do have the catalyst for the sidearm, whenever you have Devour, this weapon weakens targets on hit. And you can also stun anti-barrier champions because we are using a sidearm. And for the power weapon, I just put a rocket launcher, and for me I mostly use Apex Predator because it's very good in PvE. And for the perks, be sure to go for Reconstruction and Bait and Switch. And also we are using a rocket launcher so you can be able to stun overload champions. Yes, it's kind of hard to do that, but it is what it is. If you guys would like to check out the seasonal artifact mods, it'll be right here if you're interested. For the stats, go for Resilience and also Discipline. For the armor mods, here's what I was using for this build. And for the gauntlets, I am using Grenade Kickstart, so it's the same thing as Melee Kickstart. It would convert your armor charges into more grenade energy. So if you guys like to spam your abilities and also like to weaken targets and also get infinite amounts of Devour, then this build is for you. Now let's head to the third build, the Arc Titan. This one's the same thing as the Void Titan with the exotic armor piece, so I'm using Heart of Inmost Light. For the Striker subclass, I am using Thunder Crash as our super ability, and for the class ability, be sure to go for Thruster. For the Arc Melee, go for Thunderclap, and for your Arc Grenade, go for Pulse Grenade. For the aspects, the main one you gotta go for is Touch of Thunder. This one basically enhances your Pulse Grenade, so it would create an Ionic Trace periodically as it damages targets and increases in damage over time. The second aspect is Knockout. Defeating targets with melee attacks starts health regeneration and makes you amplified. For the fragments, the first one I put is Spark of Shock. Your Arc Grenades jolt to targets, but you would get minus 10 discipline. The second fragment is Spark of Magnitude. Your lingering Arc Grenades, such as Pulse Grenades, have extended duration. The third fragment is Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace. The last fragment I chose to put is Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. So for the kinetic weapon, I chose to put the Scatter Signal again, just because I want to stun anti-barrier champions. And same thing for the energy weapon. I chose to put the Solar Hand Cannon, just because I want to stun unstops as well. And for the heavy, I put the Dragon's Breath, just to stun overload champions as well. And again, if you'd like to check out the seasonal artifact mods, it would be right here if you're interested. And again, for the stats, it's the same thing as the Void, so you can go for Resilience or Discipline. And here are the armor mods for this build if you're interested. So again, if you guys would like to spam your abilities non-stop and also getting tons of ignitions for your heavy weapon and also getting tons of Ionic Traces with our grenades, then this build is for you. Now let's head to our fourth build, the Strand Titan. So for the exotic armor piece you gotta use is the Abeyant Leap. Here's what it does. The Drenger's Lash spawns 2 additional projectiles. They track more aggressively and they travel farther. You would also gain Woven Mail whenever you suspend a target. So for the class ability, be sure to go for Rally Barricade just because of the base cooldown, which is much less than Towering Barricade. And for the Strand Grenade, go for Shackle Grenade for an additional suspend. For the aspects, be sure to go for Into the Fray. Whenever you defeat a Tangle or casting your super, it will grant Woven Mail to nearby allies. While you have Woven Mail, your melee regeneration rate is increased. And also the main one you're going to want to use is Drenger's Lash. Whenever you activate your class ability, it would release these Strand Waves, and whenever they hit a target, they will suspend. And for the fragments, the first one, be sure to go for Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy, but you would get minus 10 discipline. For the second fragment, be sure to go for Thread of Continuity. Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. And for the third fragment, be sure to go for Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail, but you would get minus 10 resilience. And last but not least, go for Thread of Transmutation. While you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows creates a Tangle, but you would get plus 10 strength. And now let's head to the weapons. Of course, with every suspend build, you have to put this Strand Bow called the Wish Keeper. So basically, whenever you charge up this bow up to 6 charges, and whenever you hit fire after that 6th charge, you're going to summon this Snare Weaver, and whenever an enemy goes onto that Snare Weaver, they will suspend. And once they suspend, you would gain faster draw time speed for a short duration, and you would also get bonus weapon damage to suspended enemies. And for the catalyst trait for this bow, I do recommend going for multi-threaded Snare Refit because Snare Weaver traps can suspend more targets. And of course, this is a bow, so you're going to be stunning unstoppable champions champions, and also you're going to suspend them as well. For the energy weapon, I chose to put this arc sidearm, and here are the perks that I do recommend you guys should be going for. The first perk column, be sure to go for beacon rounds, and for the second perk column, be sure to go for volt shot. And yes, this is a sidearm, so you're going to be stunning anti-barrier champions. And for the power weapon, I'm using, of course, the Apex Predator, just because of the overload champs. For the stats, of course, with Titans, go for resilience, and for your second stat, go for discipline. And here are the armor mods for this build, and the main ones I do want to mention is on the Titan mark called Utility Kickstart. Same thing for the other ones. Whenever you activate your Rally Barricade, it would consume your armor charges into more class ability energy. So if you guys like to suspend targets non-stop and also get infinite amounts of move and mail, then this build is for you. Let's now head to our final build, and it's on the Stasis Titan. For the exotic armor piece I chose to put is the Horror Frost Z. Here's what it does. When using the Stasis subclass, your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals that slows nearby targets when created. Standing behind this barricade will grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. For the class ability, it doesn't really matter because if you are to use Rally Barricade, it would override that to Towering Barricade. For the Stasis Grenade, be sure to put Glacier Grenade for more stasis crystals. And for the aspects, go for Tectonic Harvest. Shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. This shard grants melee energy when picked up by you or your allies. And also the next fragment is Cryochasm. After sprinting for a short while, enables a longer and more powerful slide. Sliding into stasis crystals or frozen targets shatters them and any nearby frozen targets. For the fragments, be sure to go for Whisper of Shards. Shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increases the duration of this benefit. And the second one, go for Whisper of Refraction. Defeating slowed or frozen targets grants you class ability energy. So the main ones we got to worry about is frozen, in which case we are going to be doing that with our bow and with our stasis crystals. The third fragment is Whisper of Fissures. Increases the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. And the last one I chose to put is Whisper of Rhyme. Collecting a stasis shard grants a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds to the overshield and refreshes the timer. Of course, with every stasis crystal build, you have to put the Virgilus Curve, so whenever you get final blows with this weapon, it would grant you stasis arrows. Your next hipfire shot will fire all of them in a single volley, and the max amount of stasis arrows you can hold is ×5. So if you do have the catalyst, whenever you freeze or slow targets, it would give you a faster draw time speed for a short period of time. So you can stun unstops because this is a bow, and 2, you can also hipfire and freeze the unstop. For the energy weapon, I chose to put the arc sidearm again just because of stunning anti-barrier champions, and same thing for the heavy weapon, I chose to put this solar rocket launcher because of overload champs. And here are the seasonal artifact mods if you guys are interested. Again, for the stats, go for discipline and also resilience. Alright, for the final time, here's what I was using for this build for the armor mods. So for this build, if you guys would like to spawn in millions of stasis crystals and also sliding into them to instantly destroy them, which spawns in stasis shards, which gives you tons of armor charges, which will convert that into more grenade energy, then this build is for you. So this is the conclusion for all of the builds that I think are going to be very good in the new Onslaught mode. So if you guys did enjoy and found this informative, be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, evening, or afternoon. Take care and peace. Join the Discord!